This is the People Before Politics show, broadcast every Sunday at 6 p.m. Hosts Damon K. Jones and A.J. Woodson bring you the news that impacts our community.
Same thing. I said we're gonna segue right into Sam.
I'm a big fan.
Guys, I did not rehabilitate myself. It was the beatings the FBI gave me as a criminal that made me into a better person.
I'm big fans of you, the whole Crazy Eddie thing, Jerry with the commercials. I'm big.
Yeah, man. Welcome. We got to officially welcome Sam Antar to the Black Westchester Show. Welcome. It's great.
For those that don't know, for those who don't know, because everyone doesn't know, you are what, the cousin or nephew of Eddie?
I was the cousin of Crazy Eddie. I was the chief financial officer of the company. I was one of the main masterminds of the fraud, especially on the financial side. I invented the Panama Pump, which was the money laundering scheme that was later the plot of the movie The Accountant.
Wow.
Everything they accuse me of with Crazy Eddie, I'm guilty as charged.
Man, I like
and now what do you
like that, man?
And now what are you doing? Tell people what you're doing these days.
Well, today I do fraud investigations. Over the years after Crazy Eddie's, because I had a college degree, I had an education to draw upon. Even though I lost my CPA license, they can take away the paper, but they can't take away what's in your head.
That's exactly
right. And the federal agents that were my sworn enemies back in the day, actually, it was strictly business. In other words, I never hated my enemies. Right. I did business. And because of that, after the Crazy Eddie case, they started referring me for teaching and speaking appearances. Wow. And eventually it morphosized into working as a forensic accounting by some of the very law firms that sued me on behalf of the shareholders I defrauded. And later on, I did whistleblower work, similar to the Tish James case, where I submitted whistleblower complaints to the SEC and cashed in very, very good on those things. Then I worked for law firms that represented whistleblowers. And unfortunately, I had a bad situation where two of my sons passed away, one in 2013, one in 2021, went into a depression, got, as would be normal under the circumstances.
Right, absolutely.
There was a period of time that I really wasn't that mentally productive. But over time, I started getting productive again. And pretty much my blogging is, the only money I make is from Google Ads, which is about $2 a day. Which helps fund my investigations, and that's it. It's pretty much a hobby at this point. I'm quasi-retired. Some days I think I'm retired. Some days I'm not. Yeah.
Before you go, Damon, I want to say, my grandfather always used to say, whatever you do, be good at it. Because if you're good, even when you're doing bad things, the government will find a job for you. And it reminds me of that the other guy from the show who DiCaprio played him, Catch Me If You Can. With the checks, he's writing all the checks. And now he has been used to all the systems to catch all of those things that all the banking people use now. They use him because he was so good at what he was doing.
Yeah, Frank Abagnale actually reviewed Retail Gangster by Gary Weiss, which is a book on the Crazy Eddie fraud. Very, very detailed in its citations, 28 pages of endnotes for a 280-page book. So it gives you an idea of how he was detailed. And Abagnale gave it a very, very glowing review. I've never met Abagnale, but of course everybody's heard about Frank Abagnale. He's a legend.
Right.
Hey, Damon.
So Sam, what made you look into Tish? Like that has been the conversation of people online. Like, how did it? You're looking at Tish James, right? You're looking at somebody that's on TV, what came, did a letter come across? Like, how did it happen that you just stumbled on all this stuff, man?
I'll explain. Over the months, going back, I don't know how long, I was blogging about New York City and deception. First, I was blogging about how they were lying about the crime figures, how they were creating a positive spin on it. Then I started looking, because remember, I'm an army of one. I'm not a big media organization with 100 people that I can pay attention to everything. Got limited resources and limited time. So then I started looking about how New York City was spending money. I started examining the New York City checkbook website, saw that there were $4 billion a year in transactions where they don't even identify the payee or the purpose. Now, there could be legitimate parts of that too, why you don't want to identify the payee or the purpose, battered children, etc. But yeah, I saw it being abused for regular travel expenses and supplies and stuff like that. Then I started looking at how the campaigns were spending money. And I'd written about Brad Lander, who's the controller, Humani Williams, who is the public advocate,
Right.
and I'd written about several state senators. And along the way, I started writing about Adrian Adams, who's the head of the city council, speaker of the city council. And I noticed that she was very, very extravagant in her spending. Let's put it that way.
Right.
And that led me along the way, keep going and going and going. It led me to Tish James. And I said, okay, let me look at that campaign finance. Wow, shit. There's a lot of crap going on here. There's a lot of extravagant expenditures. Okay. Then I put it aside and I started looking at the New York State financial disclosures, which is separate apart. How much money did they make? What assets they have, etc. And I went down the line. If you go to the website, Kathy Hochul is first. A lot of this stuff was already written about. Leave it alone. Delgado was second. I couldn't find anything. I frisked him, Michael. He's clean. I frisked him. He's clean. Third person I went was to Letitia James. And initially, the first thing I noticed is that she on her financial disclosures, she had a Virginia property on Peroni Avenue in Norfolk that she purchased in 2020. When I'm going through the financial disclosures, I noticed in 2023, she took 2 mortgages on the property, totaling between $250,000 to $400,000, when she only valued the property at $100,000 to $150,000. Now, that would be a red flag for everybody. I think you're a former cop, Damon?
Yeah. Look, correction.
That would be a red flag for everybody. Right.
Yeah, John.
Well, thank God I didn't get beatings thank God I didn't get beatings from you to make me a better person. But anyway, the point being is that I looked, wow, this is crazy. 250 to 400. She's valuing it 100 to 150. So I looked at Zillow and this and that. And at most they were valuing it at $200,000. And I don't want to quote Zillow because it's a bot and all of that stuff. Right. I stuck to the facts. So automatically I said, let me order a title report on that. I want to see what the hell is going on that property. So I spent the $200, ordered a title report, right? And all of a sudden it comes back and it says she took out a mortgage on the home when she purchased it for $108,000 that was never disclosed. It should have been disclosed. And the 2 mortgages that led me to the title report aren't in the property records. So I said, what the hell is going on here? You have 1 mortgage that you didn't disclose to New York State. You have 2 mortgages that you did disclose to New York State that weren't in the property records. And and that led me along the path to the other Virginia property in Sterling Street, and led me along the path as far as the Brooklyn property is concerned. And after that, I started to go back to her campaign spending. I says, well, let me just see if there's any state spending, spending from her own office that taxpayers pay for that coincide with the campaign spending. I said, wow, sheesh. There's 6 private jet transactions totaling $40,000 in change to a jet charter company called Venture Jets. No other government agency since 2014 ever did business with them, except for Tish James. She did, and a few of those private jet expenditures overlapped her campaign outings. And after the state stopped paying for those expenses, her campaign started to pay Venture Jets for her private travel. So that's pretty much how I got to Tish James.
Wow.
Let me ask you.
It was an evolution. Remember, I'm one person. I can't, do 20 things simultaneously.
Right.
That's how real criminal investigators do it. It's one step at a time, and one fact builds on another, builds up to another fact, builds up to another fact.
It's like this lady on Newsmax, Lydia, I forgot her last name, said to me, it's just peeling the onion. So this is a process. I didn't do the whole investigative work at once. I'm doing it as I'm going along and learning new things, step by step by step. Kind of like
journalism.
Kind of like when the feds caught me.
and it's also the same thing as journalism. Like a good journalist, that's how you don't never trip over the whole story. Something piqued your interest and you look further and you dug further and you dug further and you build on top of that. But I want to stop right there real quick because there were some things said but when you were coming on, and I seen some things written about you online. So some people are writing you off that you are paid to come after her and that you're a Trump MAGA supporter and you're working for Trump, and that's the reason why you're doing any of this. So I wanted to give you a chance to explain it.
I'm a registered Democrat, first of all. I've supported Democratic and Republican candidates, as my right is an American.
Right.
I have no ties to the Trump administration. I am not in contact with the Trump administration, although I am in contact with law enforcement, as would be expected under the circumstances. I am not,
right.
And it's totally ridiculous. But let's put that aside. Let's say everything everybody is saying about me is true for the sake of argument. My work speaks for itself. It's very documented. I post links to all of the source documents. It doesn't matter if I burned down the building yesterday. What matters is if I am correct or incorrect.
Right.
And I wanted you to get a chance to address that also. So you didn't have a personal axe to grind with Tish James and you're just coming after her. I have a
personal axe. I'm sorry to interrupt you. I have a personal axe to grind with any politician that I see is corrupt. Now, in New York, unfortunately, it's a one-party state. There's no Republican controller. There's no Republican governor. There's no Republican mayor. There's no Republican city councilor. What am I going to do? Should I, with my limited resources, should I start writing about some red state somewhere far away? Of course not. So it just led me to that trail, and I've it's kind of like people think I'm a media organization. I'm one person acting alone.
and I wanted you to get that out because we've been doing Black Westchester for going on 11 years now. I'm the main writer, the main researcher, our bigger stories have been, Damon is involved in other ways, but have been me, just me doing the research, digging. Damon gives me some tips. Somebody else gives me some tips. I further, and then once you get this, you're like, okay, you build on that, and then it leads to another question, and so I get all of that because
we're credited for getting an indictment on Mayor Richard Thomas, the mayor of Mount Vernon, which Tish James she messed the whole case up. Like,
here's my impression. Here's my impression. This is just a personal observation. When I blog about things, I root it in facts. If I don't have facts, I ask questions. Okay?
Absolutely.
Exactly.
But in this case, I'll just give you a personal observation, which could be incorrect. I don't know. Is that I don't think she is as bright as people really think she is, given what I've documented. I think she's more of a political figure than a legal figure, notwithstanding the fact that she has a law degree. I just don't see her as an effective litigator. Now you can say, well, she went after Trump and this and that, and she won whatever. But those cases are under appeal, and who knows what's going to happen.
Probably get overturned. Listen, Sam, that's one thing I've noticed this since I've been in the practice of law. There are people who have a law degree who can't litigate and then become politicians. Or seriously,
we have that with accountants also, but okay.
And they do other things because being a litigator is really tough. You really do have to think about what you're going to do before you do it.
Oh, it's a grueling thing, and somebody's life is on the line when you're litigating. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
It doesn't surprise me that she's loose like that, because there are a lot of, like, I call them pretenders among us. They simply have got through law school. They may have 5 or 6 times later passed the bar. Okay, and then they're out there. They're a licensed attorney, and they don't have much to do. They can't make a living at this, because when you hang a shingle, you can't really fake it, because, as you say, if you go into court and you don't really have it, somebody's going to end up going to prison, and you're not going to get 5 stars on Google, and that's how you build your business as a litigator. So it doesn't surprise me at all, because there are a lot of pretenders in this. I
want to ask Sam a question real quick, and Jonathan touched upon it. There was two things. One, I think in the paperwork that she signed for the property in Virginia, she says that was her primary residence.
No, she intended to make it a primary residence.
Okay. And the witness.
A lot of people get it wrong on social media, right. And I don't want to enable that description.
Right. I appreciate that. And the person who witnessed it was her deputy in the AG's office, somebody Levy or somebody. Is that
Jennifer Levy and another person, a staffer in their office?
So
Two people from our office.
In fact, I'm writing you stopped me from finishing my blog about it, but I'll share it with you now.
That brings up an interesting point, though.
So now you're scooping me on my own blog. Go ahead.
If she intends to make that her residence, won't that essentially disqualify her from being?
Yes.
No, if she actually, here's the key legal distinction. Okay, first of all, let's talk about Jennifer Levy and the other person whose name I just don't have on the top of my head. Okay, they were called to witness the document. That doesn't mean that they actually saw the document or read the document, but they will invariably be questioned by the feds,
right?
As the feds should question everybody. But it is unfortunate that she used. If these people have been working during the day and she used them during the day, that's an illegal use of state resources.
Yeah.
Now, on the other thing, you asked the question about the residence, okay?
Right.
If she had actually moved there, then she would have been disqualified for it. She never moved there.
Okay.
Let me give you go ahead. I'm sorry.
So just stating that I intend qualifies me for the special the discounts on the mortgage.
Yeah. Well, here's the thing. I'll give you the timeline.
Okay.
According to a lawyer, on August 3rd, she sends out an email stating that she doesn't intend to make it a private residence. It could be August 4th. Yeah, exactly. I'm not exactly. Around August 17th, she signs the power of attorney that's notarized by 2 members of her office, saying that she intends to make that property her primary residence. Now, the lawyer claims it was a subsequent document before closing where she reaffirmed that it was going to be a primary residence. But let's put all of that aside. Whatever her lawyer says does not matter, because the loan itself was based upon her declaration that it was going to be the primary residence, and
right.
that both her and her co-buyer, Shamice Thompson, a niece, were going to occupy it based upon that.
Right.
So it doesn't matter what she told the bank or didn't tell the bank or whatever. The reality is that's the way the loan was underwritten. It was never corrected. She never sought to say, something, I should be paying higher interest.
Let me amend this.
What?
Let me amend this. Like, she never said, I made a mistake, let me amend this before I get this benefit for this.
That's correct. I'm glad I'm on the air with you, because usually you get these 5-minute things where you go and it's very hard to elaborate and separate truth from fiction. I mean, I know people mean well, we all mean well, but nobody bats 1,000. And I don't want to propagate incorrect information at her, because that will just ruin the integrity of what I'm doing.
Right.
So she got the loan. They bought the house. And she got the break. She got that tax break.
No, it's not a tax break. What you're talking about is the homestead exemption. I'll clarify to you.
Right.
The homestead exemption protects people in Virginia that are primary residents from possible credits in the future. It's kind of like Florida in a way. In other words, I own a house. Okay, the first $50,000, I'm not quoting exact numbers, but the first $50,000 in equity in that house, creditors can't attach.
Okay.
So what they have to do is they file a homestead deed, which is recorded in the county clerk's office. And when I did the title search on that property, there was nothing to be found.
So
I actually didn't even trust the title company. I even went further and called up the county clerk's office.
So they never filed for a homestead exemption down there in Virginia?
They never filed. Her or her niece that purchased the property with it never filed for the homestead exemption.
So as a defense attorney, that's going to be moved over to the good fact. So, that's a good fact for them.
So I want to move on to the one of the other things I was reading about was, so explain the Brooklyn property. It's 5 apartments, but she listed it as 4, and you get a certain whatever benefit for 4, and once it's 5, it's commercial. Can you explain that a little bit?
Yes, I'll explain to you. In fact, I went over there about 2 weeks ago with another person, Joe Gilbert, who's been also done some invaluable stuff on the thing. So I don't want you to think I'm taking total credit for myself. It's not true. Joe Gilbert did a lot of work, and we built upon each other's work, similar to the way you build upon what you learn in an investigation. Same thing. So what happens is she has a residence in Brooklyn that she purchased around 2001. In her own name, her own person, individually. And the first mortgage she takes out listed as a 1 to 2 family house. And over the years, there were 9 other mortgages and refinancings, etc. She has every single mortgage listed at 4 families, 1 or 2 families, or 1 family. Now, 4 families or less. Now, when you buy a property, there's something called the title search, the appraisal. There's various things that go on when you buy a property. My memory is fogged a little bit because I live in Manhattan. I live in an apartment back in the day. But anyway, so what they're supposed to do is they're supposed to look at the permitted occupancy of the property. Now, there was a certificate of occupancy that was, they inspected the premises and they filed it 2 weeks before, 3 weeks before she purchased the property. Probably when she was, in contract on the property. In other words, nobody goes and buys the property. Yeah, it's yours, off the shelf, whatever. The certificate of occupancy clearly states that it's 5 units, and any loan officer, any professional will tell you that the certificate of occupancy is the paramount document. You can't just turn a 5-unit building into 4 units by saying you're occupying 2 units. That's not the way it works. There has to be what's called a legal conversion. I think it's a Section 1A or something like that conversion.
It's almost like a partition.
What?
It's almost like a partitioning of the property.
Right, exactly. There are building codes that go into it to prevent people from creating fire hazards, etc. Right. Now, complaints were registered with the Department of Buildings. I don't know who did the complaints, but they were registered. And the Department of Buildings wrote it off as a minor error. What do you mean minor error? She's saying it's 4 units, it's 5 units. Now, was there political favoritism involved? I don't know, but it smells like all the years of one so-called mistake over another so-called mistake. It gets to the point that it's not a mistake anymore. Listen, in your experience as a cop, you get people that make that one mistake, right? And you say, something, this is a warning, I'm going to let you go.
Right.
If you catch him again, what are you going to do?
Listen, I gave you the warning the last time. I need you to press down hard on this. It's 3 copies. Here's your copy of your citation. I'll see you in court.
I'm sorry, did you hear?
I'm going to say, here's a copy of your citation. Press down real hard. It's 3 copies. I'll see you in court.
Right.
I'm not giving the
warning. I don't get
second.
any traffic citations. I haven't driven a car in 6 years.
So I want to explain the difference. So, and I try to break it down to the simplest form for our audience, because a lot of them are not lawyers. And what's the big deal? Because there's something that you benefit if it was only 4 units, and 5 units or more is a commercial unit, which is judged or used separately. I want to explain that part.
The difference between 4 or less units, is that you're a residential property. The difference between 5 or more is that you're a commercial property. And that's a very big important thing. Number one is the underwriting standards are much more stringent on the commercial property. You got to put a higher down payment. The mortgage interest itself is much higher on a commercial property. And also the insurance is higher on a commercial property, which is 3 things. So every one of these things, let me digress for a second. Back in the day when Crazy Eddie was defending himself and I was the the main witness, he said, this is all Sammy's doing. He did this, he did that, but he made $100 million. I was making $300K a year. I'm not trying to plead poverty, but he was the guy that made the money. Him and his family, his dad, his brothers, they made $100 million. Okay. Here, every single mistake she claims she made benefited her financially over a period from when she purchased the property in 2001 to the last mortgage I can see on Acris, which is the database, in 2021. Every single mortgage document was to her financial benefit. Remember, it's not the first time. So I'm going to give you a warning this time. I'm going to catch you the next time, whatever. This is a repeated behavior over time.
So, and talking to somebody who's like a layman, and this just, I'm asking because I'm not clear. This kind of is getting to a territory that is sounding reminiscent of what she went after Trump for.
Well, believe it or not, I know about the Trump case, but people ask me all the time. I haven't followed. I don't know much about it. All I know is it was mortgage fraud, et cetera, et cetera. Given my limited time and resources, it's not an efficient use of my time. I'd rather just spend it all investigating the issues at hand.
Right. Sam, let me ask you a question. You said on your ex, you said multiple phantom mortgages. What do you mean by that?
Let's go back to what I described when she bought the property on Peroni Avenue in Virginia, which is the first of the two properties. The Sterling Street property was the one where she signed the affidavit.
Right.
All right. So the Peroni Avenue property, when I first looked, I saw two mortgages exceeding the value of the property by a ratio of at least 2-to-1. Then I looked and I saw a third mortgage that was never disclosed, and I couldn't find the two mortgages that were disclosed in the financial filings with New York State. These are what I call phantom mortgages. She has also another mortgage that she lists on her financial disclosures in relating to the 296 Brooklyn property, 296 Lafayette Avenue, Brooklyn. That mortgage appears on her financial disclosures to New York State. I can't find it in Acris. So here's the question. Okay, I don't think she made up those mortgages. This is my opinion. Again, I don't want I'll tell you when I deviate from facts to opinion. I don't think that she fabricated those mortgages. What I do think is questions should be asked. Why weren't those mortgages recorded?
Right. That's a
that's the whole purpose of getting a mortgage. Yeah, they don't get any protection if it's an unrecorded mortgage. It's just like a regular general debt.
That's interesting. I guess. Well, how do you have mortgages that's not recorded? I'm confused. I'm.
You know what it is? She's been on the air. This is baseless. Is this? But she won't litigate. But she's litigating by saying it's baseless and all of that. The first 2 pages of a rebuttal, of a lawyer's rebuttal to the DOJ referral, was all about Trump. I mean, I can't believe. I think she sees Trump when she wakes up in the morning, when she goes to sleep. I don't know. To me, it's like an obsession. And I'm not defending Trump. Believe me, I'm a
Sam, what you're saying, I want to make sure I'm clear. She didn't record the mortgage loan where?
Okay, the Brooklyn property, I'm not sure of the name, and I don't want to mix it up. Name is irrelevant, but I'd written in my blog, Brooklyn property, there's one mortgage listed on our financial disclosures that cannot be found on Acris. Acris is the ruling database. Everybody uses Acris. It's a government-funded database.
So I just the cop in me started like, okay, well, what's the benefit of not recording a mortgage loan? And AI spit out the answer. I have to verify this, but it literally says the main benefit of not recording a mortgage loan is to avoid paying mortgage recording taxes.
That is correct. New York is worse than the mafia when it comes to extracting money out of people. 2% is the mortgage recording tax.
The actual percentage of the loan amount. This can be particularly advantageous for borrowers as it reduces the upfront cost of securing a loan.
That is correct.
However, it also carries significant risk for lenders, as unrecorded mortgages can be subject to attack by bankruptcy trustees or other creditors, potentially invalidating the lien.
Now, you brought up a very good point. Let's play investigator to investigator, right?
Yeah.
Okay, your point is well taken. It is the mortgage company that records the mortgage. Why didn't they? What benefit did they get?
Yeah, they're exposed to more. They're exposed to more risk. Yeah.
And that's a question that needs to be answered.
Why would they do
How
that?
often do you see unrecorded mortgages?
Why would they do that for? Why would this particular? So now we need to be looking at that lender to say, what benefit did they acquire to absorb that type of risk? Why
exactly. Those are the questions that have to be asked in the investigatory process, which I'm sure that the feds, will do. Everybody thinks if people go to me, on Twitter, they say, well, she hasn't been arrested yet. It's not a 2-hour movie. You guys know that. It's a process. Exactly. You got to build it. I don't anticipate. I could be wrong. Maybe tomorrow they'll arrest her, but I don't think so. I don't think we're going to know the results of the investigation for at least 6 to 9 months, as they should take their time.
Right.
It was like when the feds investigate you, it'll take a long time. The feds could be the people cutting your grass for the last 6 months, and you would never know it. You don't know when you're being investigated. You do not know.
The Crazy Eddie investigation started in January 1987 while I was still at the company, and it didn't even involve securities fraud. It was us. We were charging the Japanese companies 3 times for the same repair and getting reimbursed on it. That's another story. But like we talked about evolving investigations over time, it was learned that there was a securities fraud. And they came after us. Now, the indictments, 1987, January, the indictments didn't come until 1992.
Jeez, 5 years.
Jesus Christ.
Well, part of it's my fault because I lied my ass off before they flipped me and they beat the shit out of me. And I became a better person. But that's another story.
Beat you?
I actually have a deep respect for the feds.
Did they physically beat you though?
What?
Did they physically beat you?
Nah, I'm only kidding. But you know the way. Listen, you're a cop. You know how they can play psychological warfare. It's kind of like
absolutely.
They're gonna put you in that room for 12 hours.
At the end of the day, Crazy Eddie's. I got 6 months of house arrest in 1994. It's nothing. 6 months of house arrest, right? But they don't understand. There's a process. It's like having a gun to your head, right? What's that game? Russian roulette, and not knowing when they pull the trigger, it's going to blow your brains out.
And it lasts for how? For you, you knew the investigation started in 1987,
right?
Oh,
so for me, the criminal investigation stopped in 1994, but the civil investigation by the SEC, because remember, there's a lower burden of proof in civil cases. So I'm still cooperating with the feds for 4 more years.
So
they basically took over my life for like 10 years. 10 years, 11 years, yeah.
Wow. Yeah, that whole process. I mean, I was under indictment for a little while. So I spent 26 months.
We should make up indictment T-shirts. I was under indictment.
I was under indictment. And it's because you don't have the certainty in your life. You don't know what's going to happen.
That's what I'm talking about. Uncertainty. Now, I'm a guy that was married at the time. I have three boys. It's not an easy thing for a parent. Yeah. I'm not trying to play the sob story to you because I made my own bed and I'm responsible for what I did. Okay. But the victim suffered 1,000 times more than me. But the point is, it is a very grueling process.
Yeah.
Right. Sam.
You only made one mistake, Sam. Well, you made a couple, but you made one critical mistake.
I should have entered politics. Go ahead.
No, out of that $100 million that they got, damn it, you didn't work out your percentages right. Okay.
Sam, I want to address. So you say you're saying on X, right? In 1983, James and her father signed a mortgage documents identifying themselves as husband and wife, not father and daughter.
Yes, not to take credit. That was Joe Gilbert who uncovered that.
He said, "What?" AJ's like, "What?
Wait, what?"
Wait, yeah, okay, wait, what? Let me explain it to AJ.
Please, yes.
In 1983, she purchased a separate property in Queens, okay, which is a property we haven't spoken about. The deed says father and daughter, but the mortgage says husband and wife. Now, when she paid off the mortgage years later, I think it was right after her father passed away, I'm not sure, but it was years later, right? It still said husband and wife. So it wasn't just it was something that was still there.
Now,
So
now what
legally,
what was that?
legally, what is that legally? Is there a crime? I mean, is that a crime? It's just
Well, even if there was a crime, it's past the statute of limitations. It's just a salacious story. You know, it's kind of like, you know, somebody dug it up. What am I going to tell you?
But it's just it might have shown a pattern and practice of fraud.
Yes,
Right.
behavior. Listen,
right.
do you think I woke up one day
exactly.
when I was doing crime? Do you think I woke up one day and said, "Oh, I'm going to become a criminal"?
Yeah.
You know,
Right.
There's a process. We all evolve and we all grow. Some of us grow on the wrong path, like me, as opposed to you guys. You ended up on the right path, and some of us grow on the right path. It's just that's just the way it is.
Right. Now, what do you think, as someone with your expertise in is she? Will you do you think that she might have to resign from this?
I think she will. I think they're going to push her to resign behind the scenes.
Right.
She's going to be. Let's talk politics, which I really don't know much about. So again, I'm going to go into speculation territory, not authoritative territory. Okay.
Right.
She is running for election in 2026 in November. It will be the general election, but we all know that most elections are decided at the primary level in New York,
Exactly.
state level, local level.
Exactly.
I think the primaries are in June, which is not that far away. It's 11 months away. She's got to raise money, create an apparatus. You know, it's not just, a day before the primary, I'm running. Okay, whatever. There's a whole process that goes involved in it, right? Now, the issue is here. Does Hochul want her baggage when she's running for governor because they're fellow Democrats?
Right.
Now, I don't think Tish James is going to resign voluntarily. That's why I posted her own resignation letter for her to save it $4,500, but that's another story. But the point is, I don't think that she will resign voluntarily. I think that the powers that be in the Brooklyn Democratic machine, where they both came out of, or where she came out of, rather, will push her to resign. That's right. Because the way that I see it now, she has minimal support. She's not really getting much support. She gets a puff interview with Errol Lewis and another puff interview with what's his name on MSNBC.
I saw
Chris Hayes, and she gets a couple of shallow press articles and editorial just dismissing it. And most of these guys don't even look at the situation. So she's not getting that huge groundswell of support behind her that I think she would have expected.
I don't think she's what I don't think, because by the time the primary, we're talking about gearing up for that election season, the indictment probably is going to drop.
That indictment will be here within the next 6 months, I bet, Sam.
Okay, but you don't want it. You don't want it hanging over the head of the Democratic Party, because remember, people have to prepare to run. It's a long.
But I don't think she's gonna. The key thing is she's not going to be able to raise money.
So here.
That's going to be the deciding factor.
I leave the politics to you guys because you know more about it than I do.
So here's the thing. So her predecessor and others have resigned from the office while this stuff was just in an allegation state because they didn't want to take away from the work that the office was doing, and they didn't want to be distraction. Her predecessor Snyderman, he resigned just with accusations. There's been no indictments, there's been no criminal charges, but he indicted because he left the office because he didn't want to be distraction to the work they're doing. Several other Democrats, we're simply talking about Democrats, have resigned in similar fashion because they didn't want their stuff to be a distraction. So we've gone from that to this to now you almost got to be forced out of office. Like, you know what I'm saying?
That's what I think. Again, you guys know politics more than me, but then again, politics is not much different than crime.
Well, as I want to say,
that's why I don't really want to run for office. That's why.
As
that's why my parole officer said the same thing. I'm sorry to interrupt you, AJ.
No, as Jonathan said when we were talking about Sean Combs, Nothing has been. She hasn't been charged with anything. She hasn't been proven. She's innocent until proven guilty. I want to make sure that we see those.
One of the key differences in this particular situation is we have a piece of paper that, if accepted, just based on the notion of that piece of paper, that creates a real problem, because those representations that are in that piece of paper are either going to be explained as intentional misrepresentations or some kind of complete mistake, absence of the mind.
Yes, and mistakes do happen. Listen, to be fair, mistakes do happen. We all make mistakes, okay?
Yeah.
And if it was one mortgage, okay.
Yeah,
If it's two mortgages, okay, I'll give you one more chance. Like you said earlier today, John.
Yeah.
Is he warning?
After
it's hard to prove, like Jonathan said last week, me and you might make a mistake. We're not lawyers.
Yeah.
But she's the AG.
She's the AG.
So I didn't read that part, or I misinterpret that part. Like, this is what you do for a living. Like, it's kind of harder to.
But that goes back to Sam's initial point. Like I said, there are a lot of pretenders among us who we give them they have the title lawyer, they have the title attorney, and then attorney general, and we give them a lot of credit for that, and they may not really have the type of intelligence that we think that they should have for that type of position. Yeah,
that's what it is. I mean, listen, when I was going through my legal squabbles, I had to go through lawyers too. I had shitty lawyers, and then I had great lawyers. That's why I ended up with house arrest. My lawyer said, we're not going to get you limited immunity while you're talking to the FBI. We're not even going to ask for a deal. That's off the table, because they got you. They can only hang you once. If they charge you with 50 counts, even though I get you off on 49 counts, the other count is still a 5-year term. He's no. You're just going to tell them everything you know. And he was right. It made his job easier. It made it a lot cheaper than going to a criminal trial. And I
try to explain that to so many people, but they become very delusional. I'm like, listen. Yes. They're looking at this indictment and they're just like, okay, I want to go to trial because I get paid more money, sir, to take you to trial. But I'm telling you, the plane's on fire and we should jump out right now. Here's my parachute. I'm jumping. You should jump before I jump.
During the Crazy Eddie thing, there were a lot of negative articles written about me from other members of the family that I was quietly cooperating with the feds against. And you know what my lawyer said? No comment. No comment. No comment. No comment.
Yeah.
And that's whatever. Lawyers that try to make these things public are just using their clients as publicity props.
That's exactly right.
Lawyers should know better than anybody. Shut your client up and shut yourself up. What matters is what the DA decides to do, or the Department of Justice decides to do. And after that, what matters is what a judge is going to do and trying you get them to dismiss the charges. And then after that, it matters what a jury is going to do. Every other audience really doesn't matter.
You said a mouthful, man, because only somebody who's been through the process and really understands the process can speak to that intelligently like that.
Well, getting caught taught me very, very huge lessons. Believe me if I tell you, if I didn't get caught today, I'd be still doing it. I've said that publicly for 20, 30 years.
People.
I didn't wake up one day and become remorseful. It was with a gun to my head.
Yeah.
Not actually.
But these lawyers that really, like you said, they're using their client as a sophisticated marketing scheme. It's shameful, because really you're out there, you're making it worse for your client, because
I will tell you, my conversations with law enforcement after I joined the light side instead of being on the dark side, they will tell you many lawyers do a disservice to their clients. They make matters worse rather than better.
Yeah.
And it's a shame. It's unfortunate, because here people are desperate. I get it. They need somebody. And the first person that tells them, don't worry, we're going to win this case, whatever, they latch on to them. And it's terrible what they do.
Man, I bring them in, and I'm hoping not too many people in my local market area hear this, but the reality is the reason I'm 4.9 rated is because I'm painfully raw about it. I give them statistics. 90% of people take pleas, and that's because something that Alan Dershowitz said, 99% of our clients are what we call factually guilty. That does not mean that they are legally guilty. That means that they have actually done things that will cause them to be exposed to criminal guilt. And so Out of those 10% that go to trial in a state court across the nation, 3 out of every 4 of them are convicted, meaning that you have a 1 in 4 chance, 25%. I don't like to gamble at those types of tables. The next, if you go in federal court, you have a 3% chance of being acquitted, 97% chance of being convicted. And so
that's what the feds told me way back in the day too.
That number still holds true today.
97% conviction rate or something like that.
97% conviction rate. And so what are we talking about here? I'm going to show you the evidence that the state intends to use to present in a courtroom to meet their burden, and you make a determination as to whether you want to go through with that ordeal, or if you would like me to, we can sit back and wait for the offer to come, which is one of the things that I suggest. I don't suggest going to beg a prosecutor for a deal, because you will get the shittiest deal you've ever imagined when you're in that begging position. But, you start talking to the prosecutor early about the case and about your client, humanizing them and trying to build a relationship with them, and then getting something that is reasonable to resolve the matter.
Well, that's what happened with me in the Crazy, because I've been working with the same group of federal agents for so long. They humanize themselves to me, and I humanize myself to them, and they ended up liking me.
Yeah, that's exactly right. That's exactly the way
and that's the way it is. But there's another problem also: bad lawyers and also bad clients that don't tell their lawyers the truth.
Yeah.
Or even if they do tell their lawyers the truth, they don't really help their lawyers put together their defense. They think that their lawyers are gonna guesswork themselves into it. So it's a very, very big problem when it comes to the legal process, getting a client to tell you the truth. And the lawyer sometimes has got to smack the client around, saying, no, that doesn't make sense. You're lying to me. I can't represent you unless you tell me the truth. And then I'll decide. That's why we have attorney-client privilege.
Yeah, I'm painfully honest, and I say, listen, here's the deal. If you were to go see a doctor and you were suffering from, say, cancer, you can hide many of your symptoms, but it'd be best for you to tell the doctor, listen, I'm shitting blood right now, so that he can actually start looking at your, at your colon to see if what's causing that. And so I tell people all the time, I'm like, listen, you really want to be honest with me? This is a no judgment zone. It is so that I can begin to build a defense. And I also explain to them, it is not me against the state of Maryland or me against the government. It's me and you against them to be able to get you a good outcome.
Right. And also, a bad client can hurt a lawyer's reputation too.
Right.
Okay. People get it that people have the right to defend themselves and whatever. But what could happen is a bad client can make representations that the lawyer relays to the prosecutors and trying to do. And if they sense the lawyer is not being credible or lying, it hurts the lawyer with his future clients.
It hurts, man. So Sam, you were talking. It's almost therapeutic to hear this, because. And we really need to start talking about this, Damon, out in the open, because a lot of folks inside of our community are essentially using their lawyers as parrots and to just say stuff that they think is going to work to their benefit. It hurts themselves, and then later on down the line, it hurts other clients as well.
Remember the Miranda rights. Everything you can and will say will be used against you, something like that. So anything her lawyer puts in writing, everything that Tish James puts on the air, everything that she says will be used against her.
Yeah. So when I saw her, these are entirely baseless allegations. I'll tell you, man, I know she wasn't advised by a lawyer at that point, because that's really going to make the government. They're going to hunker down, and they're going to really want to.
What's the legal? Because another lawyer on YouTube, a very brilliant guy, I don't recall his name, a couple of weeks ago, said, "What's the definition of the word baseless? Baseless doesn't mean that the facts don't support the claim. It just means that it's legal linguistic twist on things."
Yeah, she's basically saying that it's completely fiction, and in order for this to be completely fiction. That would have to be a real stretch. The word baseless, it doesn't really have a really good definition at all, because it's too amorphous.
Well, if you was her attorney, what would you advise her? If you was her attorney, what would you advise her?
I would start off
Shut
with
up.
TFU.
Shut up. And if I were an attorney, I wouldn't be leaking rebuttal replies to the press.
Yeah. And that's what
DOJ wants to leak it. Shame on them, but she shouldn't leak it back.
And that's what troubled me. I said, why is this out here for people to talk about on YouTube? And one girl had the whole letter and the exhibits and everything. I was like, what is she doing?
So there are pretenders among us. There are people who say they're criminal defense lawyers who might be in her ear telling her to do some of that DS. I call DS dumb shit, right? And she's out there doing it, right? She's out there actually doing it. And so what happens is they think that they are going to influence a jury pool at this stage of the game. And what you're doing is you're skipping all the way to that step by saying, I'm going to start putting my narrative out here that sounds like a media person and not really a lawyer.
Now, let me come back to you on that. Like you said, what percentage of people, actually go to trial at the end and and get convicted? 90-something% of the time, right?
Yep.
But what she's doing is she's killing her other options.
Yeah, she's
Right.
taking them off the
And
table.
she's also invigorating the prosecution to go after her. No, one thing I can tell you from my experience of law enforcement, they hate people on the other side with big mouths.
Yeah, that's exactly right. They're going to prove it to you. They're going to shut you up with their legal ability. And so that's why it's best just to shut up. If there's a legal argument that can be made with a straight face and gives you a basis for a dismissal or even shows weakness in the state's case, you might be able to use that as leverage to be able to get a better resolution or deal. Right. But if you don't really have that and you are just out there running your mouth, what you are doing is boxing yourself into a situation where you're going to be forced to go to trial because the offer is going to be so shitty.
Well, here's the thing.
Let me ask you a question. Wouldn't you expect the attorney general to know that? Because that's because they're usually on that side where they would go after somebody like you just said.
The assumption is that she's a litigator and a trial attorney. If she's not a trial attorney, she doesn't know that. She's probably.
There's a big difference between a trial attorney, between a litigator, and the person that does real estate closings.
I'm going to trial tomorrow morning at 8:00 on a DUI in Prince George's County, Maryland. I'm at 6:00 tonight, at 8:00 tonight on the radio with you all. That's how comfortable I am going to trial, right? And the prosecutor sent me over an offer on Friday at 10 and said I need to respond back at 2. Otherwise, the offer's off the table. I'm like, okay, well, let's just stoke up a jury then and see what they say. So, and the reason is because it's a DUI case, right? I start off with, listen, ladies and gentlemen, everybody has the right to go and have a drink at the ball game. The state has to prove that you're impaired, and that's it. And so we're going. We're going, and we're going to go to trial. She's going to find out tomorrow because she's probably thinking that the average attorney is going to be like, listen, let me take that offer from my client that you just sent over on a Friday. No. We're going to trial. But there's a lot of pretenders among us, and they're scared. They're more scared to go to trial than their clients are, and that's a lot of them. And that's really sad because they're not really trial attorneys, and they've gobbled up a lot of people's money. And they don't really know.
And it takes to be an effective trial attorney. It takes a lot of time. It's a big mental drain. Yes. You gotta dot every I, cross every T. You never know what a jury's going to do. You never know what questions are going to come out from the other side. Right. You can't predict. So what you're supposed to do is prepare for every possibility so you can respond. And it's not that easy as me saying it in 3 sentences.
I keep checklists around me, and those checklists are so that. I'm 52 now, and so I noticed that my mind is not as quick as it used to be. But, I keep those checklists so that I can okay, did I do this? Did I do this? Did I do this? Did I do this? In fact, when I get in a trial position, I tell my client, listen, here's your pad. Here's your piece of paper. If you have a question, please write it down. I'm going to be so locked in right now. I need to cook over here, and I need you to sit there while I cook. Because otherwise, those odds that we're talking about, those 1 in 4 odds in state court, will really turn into some horrible odds if you interrupt me.
That's correct.
Because we're in an operation room at that point. And the last thing you want when you're in an operation with a doctor is somebody disturbing him while he's cutting on you. So,
right.
So I'll say this, John, if I ever go back to crime, and sometimes it's tempting, I'm going to hire you as my defense attorney if I get caught. But hopefully this time I'll be smart enough not to get caught.
I tell my clients all the time when they're starting to tell me how to do my job, I'm like, listen. The fact that you're in a cage right now and you're telling me this is what you think, I respect your opinion, but just for right now, let me do the thinking. And then I'm going to double back to you and say, hey, now tell me what you think. But let me start understanding. You just tell me everything that happened. Because,
Too many people watch TV movies on.
They watch too much TV. They Google shit, and they literally like they Google stuff. They watch TV and watch this. You know this. Behind those four walls at the detention facility, did you know that there's a law school?
I wasn't a jailhouse lawyer. I was a house arrest lawyer.
Hey, David, there's a whole legal society back there, man. You know,
yeah,
and they're telling
absolutely.
They're telling each other, this is what you got to do. You got to tell your lawyer this. I was like, listen, man, go back there and tell him I need to hire him as soon as he gets out.
One thing I learned from doing research is the first answer from Google or even AI is generally the wrong answer.
Yeah, exactly.
So
Exactly.
As we come into the close of the show, I know you were saying you expect an indictment or something to come down, maybe like in 6 months or so.
Yes.
I don't know
who knows what's going to happen. Yeah, I would say 6 months to a year, but it depends. I would hope that they don't rush it. Okay, that they take their times, dot every I and cross every T before they do anything. That's what I hope.
Any predictions, if any, from a legal perspective on the Diddy case?
No, I haven't followed, like the Trump case. I haven't followed it.
No, but Jonathan was speaking about it earlier.
So I just looked at the indictment. I think that some of those charges are going to be beat, and I don't think that all of them are.
Yeah, but John, remember this: they can beat 49 out of 50 charges. It doesn't matter. That's what the problem is.
He's getting.
And I get it. And I get it. Along the way, there are people that are saying bogus things, trying to take advantage of the situation so they can get a civil suit. I get all of that. Believe me when I tell you. You know, let's put it this way. I don't think he's as guilty as he is charged.
Right.
But then again, I don't know if he's not guilty. You know, it's a range, so to speak.
Yeah, I don't think I can't wait to see the trial as it develops. When I looked at the indictment and the charge set, some of the charges didn't. I was like, scratch that, not guilty, judgment of acquittal, whatever. But I do agree with Sam. They've got a lot of bullets in that chamber, and one of them is probably going to hit. And so. That's what the problem is when you're facing multiple charges as a defendant, and law enforcement knows that. By the way, they know that.
Right. And we really don't know what Cassie has told them.
Right.
Because that
was the jump off.
That lawsuit she had was the tip of the iceberg.
Yeah, the blueprint almost. Like
right. It was the tip of the iceberg because she was just trying to get away from him.
Right.
Filed a lawsuit. And remember she filed it as an employee. So we don't know what other things that Cassie has saw and might have been forced to do.
And who else she saw receive some of that same type of treatment that she saw that they then went and investigated. We only know of one person right now at this point that's been very vocal, but it's going to be interesting. I would not want to be sitting in federal court with Mr. Diddy on a multi-count indictment. You know, when it first happened.
But you know something? If you're going to take that witness, I can tell you, I was doing it as a government witness, and even when you're telling the truth, it is very, very intimidating.
Yeah, absolutely.
It is not easy.
There's a picture of me. There's the sheriff that I
just get up there and you just whip up. That's something. You know the way lawyers.
Right.
When my story gets told entirely, there's a picture of me on the stand as state's witness against the sheriff down there, Damon, and they took this picture of me breaking down crying because the attorney had asked me a question about him and what was he doing, and this guy I had deemed as my friend, and at that point I'm like, man, I started crying, and that's the picture that he always puts out, that he was lying so much he was crying. It was very intimidating process.
What?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
My prediction on Diddy, with my limited knowledge, my from the hip prediction, again, this is where I vary from facts to opinion, that he's going to get convicted on something.
Yeah.
And as far and Jonathan, going back to the other case, which you looked at, any last input or I don't know, prediction or whatever?
Put it this way. Anytime you guys want me on, I'm very easy to talk to. You could have me on. I'll give you this offer. John, when you have an asshole client or whatever that you need somebody to smack them around, not of course physically, call me up.
Man, I will do that.
I'll have a talk to them with them.
I'm going to send John your number, Sam.
To
I'm
make
going to
it,
send
to
John
make it
your number.
attorney-client privilege, John, you can give me $1.
Okay.
It legalizes attorney-client
You're
privilege.
part of the team. You're part of the team.
Right, part of the team. But seriously, I really hate when that happens, and it's not a thing that's spoken about publicly too often. And it's a shame. A lot of people end up with unnecessary. First of all, innocent people can get convicted. Guilty people can lessen the charges or the impact against them. It's unfortunate that that's the way it is. It really is.
I want to write a book about it so that people begin to get educated, because there is a lot of that happening in our community. And then you have the moms who get involved and they say, "Oh, my baby I can't believe you're going to plead him guilty." I do a lot of panel work, and the moms get in the way, and say, "Listen, I'm like, look, Mom, I can't give you all of the facts. Your son could possibly explain that to you after the trial because I don't want him talking over the phone. But there's things that that he needs to consider that you don't know that will expose him."
Then you have the I won't say in a bad way, but the ignorant safety net around them, their families, that also feed them with misinformation because they don't understand, they don't know.
They don't know.
Right.
And,
right.
I tried to explain it to my thinking is that I give analogies to them so that they can make intelligent and informed decisions. Like, listen, if your body is suffering from a leg that has gangrene on it, and the doctor comes into the room and he says, "Listen, your leg has gangrene on it. We need to amputate. If we don't amputate, there's a good risk that will spread throughout your entire body and you will die. You get to make the decision, but I'm informing you so that I believe we need to do this operation, and you make the decision. And it is my medical advice to you to do this operation so that you increase your odds of living." They just don't accept that. And I will say this too, Sam. Black attorneys make up less than 5% nationwide out of all the attorneys. The ABA keeps numbers on this. Black attorneys, I'm male and female, make up less than 5% of the entire licensed attorneys throughout the nation. And so what we see is there's a 5% chance that they will run into a black attorney. Then there's a less than 5% chance that they will run into a black male attorney. And out of those 2%, less than half of 1% are actual trial attorneys. And so when we explain these things to them, a lot of them take it like, "Oh man, you just don't want to fight for me, man. I knew I should have went with one of the, here's the I knew I should have."
Believe me, when I first started getting investigated, I was the same way.
Yeah.
Life's a journey. I didn't become smart because I was smart. I became smart because I was stupid.
Yeah.
Right.
Learning from my stupidity.
Intelligence starts at the point of ignorance. And so
Right.
you learn, but I'm trying to really help get that message out, because there's a lot of unearned errors, unforced errors.
Any way I can help you do that, I will help you do that, because that's something
That's
that
great.
very rarely discussed. I'm glad that we brought it up here.
Yeah.
Great, man. That's what it's all about.
I want to thank both of y'all for coming on the show and for this conversation, for breaking down your perspectives on these cases. For everybody tuned in, this is Black Westchester presents the People Before Politics radio show. We're on every simulcasting live on Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, X, and somewhere else, YouTube. If you're watching on YouTube, make sure you subscribe. Make sure you hit the subscribe button. Make sure you like and share. Until next week, peace.
God bless you, sir. Gentlemen, God bless you all.
Thank you, Sam. Thank you,
John.
John.
Thank you. Good to talk to you, Sam.
Anytime.
Yes.
Anytime.
Later.
This is the People Before Politics show, broadcast every Sunday at 6 p.m. Hosts Damon K. Jones and AJ Woodson bring you the news that impacts our community. Join us for unfiltered, unapologetic coverage of the stories that matter most. Black Westchester Magazine presents the People Before Politics show, the news with the black point of view.